Marcus Bennett adjusted the strap of his worn leather satchel, which contained the culmination of years of hard work, his portfolio. Inside were carefully curated prints of his paintings, sketches, and digital works, all created with painstaking care and passion. His eyes flickered nervously as he stood in front of the sleek, intimidating glass doors of Whitmore Gallery, the most prestigious art space in the city. He had heard the stories, of course. Every artist with dreams of making it big knew about Whitmore Gallery. It was the launching pad for careers, the kind of place where a single show could change everything. But for someone like Marcus, a young, black artist without a long list of prestigious connections or a legacy to lean on, it felt like an impossible dream. He took a deep breath and pushed open the doors. The gallery's interior was minimalist to the point of being sterile, the white walls lined with contemporary works that all looked the same to Marcus, abstract splashes of color and bizarre shapes that seemed to be more about the artist's ego than the art itself. Yet, in this space, art was an industry. And in this industry, Marcus was just a nobody. The receptionist, a sharp-looking woman with platinum blonde hair and oversized glasses, barely glanced up from her screen as he walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice devoid of warmth. Marcus cleared his throat. "I'm here to see Mr. Whitmore. I have an appointment." She raised an eyebrow. "And your name?" "Marcus Bennett." She tapped away at her keyboard, a look of disinterest crossing her face as she searched for his name. After a moment, she sighed. "Mr. Whitmore is in the back. Just take a seat." Marcus nodded, his heart thumping in his chest. He moved to the waiting area, where a few other artists sat, their own portfolios tucked under their arms. They all seemed so polished, so confident. And here he was, just a man with dreams, trying to get his foot in the door. After what felt like an eternity, a tall man with thinning gray hair and a tailored suit appeared in the doorway. "Marcus Bennett?" he called, his tone sharp and dismissive. Marcus stood quickly, clutching his satchel tightly, as if the leather could somehow offer him comfort. He followed Mr. Whitmore through a narrow hallway and into an office that was as cold and sterile as the gallery itself. A minimalist desk sat in the center, flanked by sleek chairs. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive cologne. "Please, have a seat," Mr. Whitmore said, motioning to a chair in front of his desk. His voice was authoritative, yet there was an unmistakable air of condescension. Marcus sat, setting his portfolio carefully on the desk between them. "I'd love for you to take a look at my work. I believe it has a lot of potential, and I'm hoping you'll see that too." Whitmore didn't immediately respond. Instead, he picked up a piece of paper from his desk, reading it with an air of indifference. Marcus shifted nervously in his seat, but after a moment, Whitmore finally looked up. "Interesting," he said, his tone dripping with a mix of boredom and thinly veiled derision. He flipped through the pages of Marcus's portfolio without even really looking at them, his eyes scanning the pieces in an almost dismissive fashion. It's certainly bold." He closed the portfolio with a snap, the sound louder than Marcus had hoped. "But I don't think your work has the kind of depth we're looking for here. You see, the gallery is about more than just paint on canvas or digital doodles. It's about making a statement, an intellectual statement. These," he waved the portfolio away with an almost theatrical flourish, "they just don't have it." Marcus's chest tightened. He knew this moment was coming. Artists like him didn't get a fair shot in galleries like Whitmore's. Still, the sting of rejection was sharp, the words of dismissal bitter as they sank in. But he forced himself to hold it together, even as his hands began to sweat. "I see," Marcus said quietly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Thank you for your time." Whitmore's gaze flicked toward him, as if Marcus were an afterthought. "Of course," he said, already turning back to his paperwork. "Good luck, Mr. Bennett. You'll find your place somewhere, just not here." Marcus stood up, grabbing his portfolio with shaky hands. The weight of his dreams suddenly felt unbearable. He walked out of the office, not bothering to say goodbye, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Outside, the cold air hit him like a slap in the face. His heart pounded in his chest as he walked down the steps of the gallery, past the gleaming windows where the work of others, more intellectual, more highbrow, shone proudly. He fought back the lump in his throat, fighting the urge to crumble. The streets felt longer on the walk back to his apartment. He hadn't expected an easy path, but this? This felt like rejection at its worst, insulting, dismissive, and built on assumptions that Marcus knew were wrong. He was more than what Whitmore had seen. His art was more than that. The sting of failure twisted deep inside him, but Marcus pushed it away, replacing it with resolve. One rejection wouldn't define him. He would show them. He would show them all. As he passed a newsstand, an article about a viral painting caught his eye. His hand froze for a moment, his eyes tracing the words. Rising star in the art world, a bold new vision from a young, unconventional artist. A flicker of hope sparked in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was a different way forward. The following days felt like a blur to Marcus. He had returned to his small apartment, the rejection still fresh in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see the dismissive wave of Mr. Whitmore's hand, the way he barely glanced at his work as though it wasn't even worthy of a moment's consideration. The words echoed in his mind, replaying over and over again, "It's just bold. It doesn't have depth." The sting of those words, uttered so carelessly, sent a deep ache through his chest. Was his art not good enough? Was he not good enough? He had worked so hard, sacrificed so much. Yet, here he was, tossed aside with a casual dismissal as if he were just another face in the crowd. Marcus spent the next few nights at his easel, painting with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The brushstrokes were wild and powerful, his colors vivid as his frustrations bled into the canvas. He painted and painted, unable to stop the flood of emotion, unable to quiet the growing sense of anger that seemed to fill the very air around him. Then came the phone call. It was late, the streetlights outside casting long shadows through the window. Marcus had been pacing around his apartment, his thoughts a whirlwind, when his phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up without checking the number, expecting yet another telemarketer or spam call. But when he answered, the voice on the other end was familiar. Marcus? It was Lila, his longtime mentor and one of the few people who had always believed in him. She had been an artist herself before choosing to teach others, and her words had helped Marcus navigate the harsh world of art. When she had first met him years ago, she saw his potential before anyone else did. Lila, hey, Marcus said, his voice weary. What's up? I just saw your portfolio, she said, her voice low and serious. You met with Whitmore, didn't you? He exhaled deeply, not sure whether to be embarrassed or angry. Yeah. I did. Didn't go well. There was a long pause on the other end, then a soft sigh. I know. I saw the look on your face when you left that gallery last week. That man is well, let's just say he's not worth your time. You know, you can't let people like that get to you. You're better than that. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He couldn't. The hurt, the anger, the feeling of being so far from what he dreamed of, it was all too much. Lila continued, her tone reassuring. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt. I know what rejection feels like. I've faced it plenty in my own career. But you have something, Marcus. Something that man will never see. And that's your edge. I don't know, Lila, Marcus said, rubbing his temples. I don't understand. Why dismiss me like that? Why does he think my work isn't worthy? Because it challenges him, she said simply. Because it's fresh. It's real. And people like Whitmore, they can't stand that. They want the same old thing, the safe thing, the thing that doesn't make waves. But you? You make waves. You push boundaries. And that's what's going to get you noticed. A wave of uncertainty washed over Marcus. Lila's words should have comforted him, but they didn't. Instead, they made him feel even more conflicted. He had always prided himself on authenticity, on making his art reflect who he truly was. But now, he was starting to wonder if that wasn't enough in a world that seemed to only reward the polished, the well-connected, the safe. "You've got to start thinking bigger, Marcus," Lila urged, her voice gentle but firm. "Get out of your head, and get out of your comfort zone. You need to be seen by a wider audience. You need to put your art in front of the right people, the people who will see it for what it really is." "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where do I even start?" Lila's response came quickly. "I know a few people. There's a private online art community that's growing fast, artists from all over the world, pushing boundaries, sharing their work, getting noticed. You need to get in there. And I know someone who can help you get your first piece into the right hands. It's time to take your art beyond your own little corner, Marcus. Trust me." For a moment, Marcus didn't speak. The idea of putting his work out into the world, beyond the confines of rejection and limited circles, felt both thrilling and terrifying. Could he do it? Could he push past the fears that had been holding him back for so long? "Yes," he said finally, his voice filled with resolve. "I'll do it." Over the next few days, Marcus did exactly that. He joined the online art community, nervously uploading a new piece, a piece that had been brewing in his mind for weeks, one that he had been too hesitant to share with anyone before. The piece was bold and raw, capturing the tumultuous emotions he had been feeling ever since that encounter with Whitmore. It was everything his mentor had told him to be: fresh, real, and boundary-pushing. Within hours, the piece went viral. The reactions were immediate and intense. Comments flooded in from art lovers, collectors, and fellow artists, all praising the raw energy of his work. And, most importantly, one comment stood out, a message from an influential art collector named Elias King, whose wealth and reputation were known throughout the industry. He had seen the viral post and was intrigued by Marcus's style. He wanted to buy the piece. Marcus's heart raced. The price offered was staggering, far beyond anything he had ever imagined. It was just the beginning. The days following the sale of his first viral painting felt like a whirlwind. Marcus couldn't believe how quickly things had changed. One moment, he was scraping by, trying to make ends meet, and the next, his work was being talked about by art collectors, critics, and fans alike. But the excitement was tempered by a lingering sense of disbelief. Was this really happening? Was he really being recognized? Elias King, the art collector who had purchased his painting, became Marcus's first big supporter. King had a reputation for scouting out emerging talent, and Marcus was just the kind of artist he loved to champion: unconventional, bold, and unapologetically raw. "You've got something special, Marcus," Elias had told him in their first conversation. "I can see that you're not just following trends, you're creating them. I'd like to help you get your work in front of a bigger audience. There's a lot of potential here." It was a lifeline Marcus hadn't expected. The offer felt surreal. For the first time, someone with real influence in the art world believed in him. It was the validation he had craved but never thought would come. As the weeks passed, Marcus's name spread further. His works began to appear on art blogs and in online galleries, garnering more and more attention. But despite his growing success, he still couldn't shake the memory of Whitmore's dismissive words. Every time he received a new message of praise, a small part of him wondered if Whitmore, the man who had dismissed him so easily, was watching all of this unfold from the sidelines. It was during one of his late-night painting sessions when his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Elias King, it was Lila. "Marcus," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "You're blowing up. I saw your work featured in Art Monthly today, and I know people are talking about you. But listen, there's something else you need to know. There's an auction at Whitmore Gallery in 2 weeks. And they're auctioning off one of your paintings." Marcus froze. "What?" "You heard me," Lila said. "One of your pieces is being sold at Whitmore's next big auction. They're listing it as anonymous, but I have a feeling they'll realize who the artist is soon enough. You need to prepare for this. This could change everything. His stomach dropped. The idea of his work being sold in Whitmore's gallery, especially without his name being attached to it, was strange. It felt like a game of fate. But he couldn't deny the potential that lay in it. This was his chance to show Whitmore, the man who had dismissed him, that he had made a huge mistake. But Marcus wasn't interested in just showing Whitmore. He wasn't motivated by revenge or bitterness. He had bigger plans now. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that this auction, this moment, could mark a new beginning, not just for him, but for the entire art world. I'll be there, Marcus said firmly. I want to see this through. I want to be there when my work sells. The night of the auction arrived quickly, and Marcus felt a mixture of excitement and nerves as he stood in front of Whitmore Gallery. It was everything he had imagined, elegant, opulent, and full of the kind of patrons that Marcus had always dreamed of interacting with. The guests moved about, chatting and sipping champagne, dressed in their finest clothes. Marcus, however, was not there to enjoy the luxury of the event. He was there for one reason only, to see the validation of his work, and to see Whitmore's face when he realized that the artist he had dismissed was the one whose work was now commanding a fortune. The auction began, and Marcus watched from the back of the room as the paintings were presented one by one. Finally, it was time for the piece that had brought him here. The painting was revealed, and a collective gasp went through the crowd. It was his piece, the one that had gone viral. The one Elias King had purchased. The bidding started low, but it didn't stay there for long. Soon, it soared to astronomical numbers, each bid more shocking than the last. Marcus couldn't help but smile as he watched the price climb, his heart swelling with pride. The work he had created was now worth more than he had ever imagined. Whitmore was standing at the front of the room, his eyes narrowed as he watched the auction unfold. The realization slowly dawned on him, the artist he had rejected was now the one whose work was fetching millions. His expression flickered between disbelief and frustration, but he said nothing, though Marcus could see the gears turning in his mind. The final bid came in at an astounding amount, one that would change Marcus's life forever. The room erupted in applause, and the auctioneer's voice rang out over the crowd, "Sold." To the gentleman in the back corner. Whitmore's eyes shifted toward Marcus, and for the first time, there was a hint of recognition in them. But Marcus didn't give him the satisfaction of a smile or a nod. He had come for one thing only, to prove to himself that he was worthy, and to prove that the art world had underestimated him. The weeks following the auction felt like a blur of excitement and disbelief. Marcus's life had shifted in ways he never imagined. The painting that had sold for millions was now the centerpiece of his newfound reputation. It wasn't just the financial gain that had changed things, it was the way people saw him. For the first time, Marcus Bennett wasn't just a struggling artist. He was a force in the art world. The auction itself had been the tipping point. The news spread like wildfire. Art collectors and critics from around the world took notice of his work, and soon, Marcus was being featured in top-tier art publications. His name appeared on lists alongside renowned artists, and his social media accounts exploded with new followers. But it wasn't just the exposure that had Marcus grinning from ear to ear, it was the invitations. High-profile gallery owners, museum curators, and influential collectors were now reaching out, eager to showcase his work. The doors that had been slammed in his face only months earlier were now wide open. Marcus had gone from being rejected to being courted, and he relished every moment of it. Despite his rise to fame, there was still a part of Marcus that remained grounded. He hadn't forgotten the struggle, the rejection, or the humiliation he had endured at Whitmore's gallery. But now, it felt like he was playing a different game, a game where he set the rules. Elias King, who had helped elevate Marcus's work in the art world, was a constant presence in his life. They met regularly, strategizing ways to expand Marcus's reach and create more opportunities for him. King was a seasoned collector, well-versed in the business of art, and his guidance proved invaluable. "I told you, Marcus," Elias said during one of their meetings. "You've got the kind of talent that doesn't just get recognized, it dominates." The art world needs new blood, and you're exactly what it's been missing. The affirmation felt good, but Marcus didn't allow himself to get too comfortable. His ambition was now sharper than ever. He had a vision, to make art that resonated with people on a deeper level, to break boundaries not just in style, but in how art was consumed and appreciated. Soon, his works were being featured in some of the most prestigious galleries in the world. From New York to London, his art was being showcased to packed crowds. But one of the most important exhibitions was the one that was set to take place at the Modern Art Museum in Chicago. It was a defining moment. If Marcus could pull off a successful solo exhibition there, it would solidify his place as one of the most innovative artists of his generation. As he worked tirelessly on new pieces for the show, Marcus's thoughts kept drifting back to Whitmore. He knew the old gallery owner was still oblivious to his success, still wrapped up in his own world of safe, predictable art. But Marcus wasn't done with him, not by a long shot. He didn't want revenge, he wanted something much bigger. He wanted to create a legacy that would force the art world to take a hard look at its biases and narrow definitions of what constituted valuable art. One day, while he was working on a new piece in his studio, Marcus received an unexpected phone call. It was from none other than Mr. Whitmore. Marcus Bennett? Whitmore's voice sounded thick and reluctant, as though he had been stewing over his words for days. Yes, Marcus replied, a sense of anticipation building in his chest. He had no idea what this could be about, but he was ready for whatever came next. I saw your latest exhibition in Chicago, Whitmore said, his voice begrudging. I didn't think you had it in you. But I admit, I was wrong. Marcus couldn't help but smile. It was the first time Whitmore had ever admitted that he had been wrong about Marcus's potential, and it felt like a small victory. But he wasn't interested in gloating. He was interested in the future. I'm glad you saw the show, Marcus said, his voice calm. And I appreciate the acknowledgement. But I don't do this for approval. I do it because it's what I love. And it's what the world needs. Whitmore fell silent for a moment, as if the weight of Marcus's words was sinking in. Then, finally, he spoke again. I'd like to discuss a potential partnership, Whitmore said. Perhaps you'd consider showcasing your works in my gallery. I'd be happy to represent you. Marcus took a deep breath. He'd known this moment would come. He had imagined this conversation playing out in his mind, over and over again. Whitmore, the man who had mocked him, was now asking for his art. Asking for his attention. It wasn't the kind of offer Marcus had once dreamed of. He didn't need Whitmore's gallery to succeed anymore. He had built something for himself. But this was a power play. This was about showing the world that the artist he had once dismissed was no longer someone to ignore. Marcus Bennett was a force to be reckoned with. I'll think about it, Marcus said coolly, a small smile tugging at his lips. 2 weeks later, Marcus found himself standing in front of Whitmore's gallery once again. This time, though, the atmosphere was different. The nerves he had once felt had long since dissipated, replaced by a quiet confidence. The gallery that had once rejected him was now holding one of his pieces, his best piece, at an auction that was bound to make waves. As Marcus entered the grand, polished space, the familiar scent of art, wood, and fresh paint filled the air. The space felt cold, clinical, but Marcus wasn't here for nostalgia or to reflect on the past. He was here because this auction was about more than just his work, it was about his evolution, his rise to prominence, and the validation of everything he had fought for. The auction hall was already packed, full of the wealthy and influential. The chatter was a mixture of low murmurs and sharp, eager voices. The air was thick with anticipation, and Marcus could feel it hanging over him like a cloud. There were several pieces on the docket tonight, but Marcus had no interest in any of them except his own. His painting had already garnered attention. The invitation to the auction had come with a subtle hint that his piece would be a major highlight, but it wasn't until he saw the signs with his name on them that he fully grasped the magnitude of what was about to happen. He moved through the crowd, his presence mostly unnoticed as those in attendance were far more interested in the high-profile buyers and the art experts surrounding them. Marcus allowed himself to slip into the background for the moment. There was no need to draw attention to himself, not yet. As the auction began, the pieces were revealed, and the bidding started on each one. Some went for impressive amounts, but Marcus barely paid attention to them. His thoughts were focused on his piece, the one that had gone viral, the one that had already caused a stir in the art community. He knew what was coming. The big moment was fast approaching, and he was ready to witness it all. Finally, the moment arrived. The auctioneer announced his work, and the crowd fell silent as the large, stunning canvas was unveiled to gasps of awe. It was the same piece that had taken the art world by storm, a piece that had catapulted Marcus into fame. Bidding began, and the numbers flew higher than anyone could have imagined. The room was alive with competitive energy, and Marcus watched intently, noticing the way the elite bidders eyed each other with calculating glances, trying to figure out who would take home the prize. The auctioneer's voice rang out, "We are now at 2 million, do I hear 3? The bids kept coming, and with each one, Marcus felt a sense of pride swell within him. His work was no longer just a means of personal expression, it was an investment. It was changing the way art was perceived. But then, a voice from the back of the room spoke up. It was familiar, so familiar, in fact, that Marcus didn't need to look to know who it was. 3 million, Mr. Whitmore's voice boomed, the words deliberate, like a statement of authority. Marcus knew that Whitmore had been closely watching the painting, just as he had been keeping an eye on Marcus's rise in the art world. Whitmore had never been a fan of taking risks, but he had learned, as most people did in the world of high art, that some risks were worth taking. The room held its breath. 3 million was a staggering amount for a single piece of artwork. But there was still a slight hesitation and uncertainty in the air. The auctioneer's gavel hovered over the podium, and Marcus could feel the tension building. Would anyone challenge Whitmore's bid? Would the price go higher? And then, just as Marcus thought the bidding had come to an end, the unexpected happened. 4 million, came a voice from the other side of the room. The crowd turned to see Elias King, the wealthy art collector who had supported Marcus from the very beginning, standing tall and confident in the back. He had come not just as a buyer, but as a partner, ready to prove his faith in Marcus's work once again. The auctioneer's eyes widened. 4 million. We have 4 million, do I hear 5? Whitmore's face hardened, and for the first time since Marcus had arrived, there was a visible shift in his demeanor. He had been prepared to buy the painting, to add it to his collection, but now it was slipping through his fingers, by the hands of a man he hadn't anticipated. The bids continued, but with each increase, Whitmore's hope of acquiring the piece faded. The auctioneer's voice rang out again, sold. To Mr. King at 4 million. The room erupted into applause, but Marcus was focused solely on Whitmore's stunned expression. He had never seen the man look so flustered, so caught off guard. Whitmore stood there, frozen for a moment, before collecting himself. His gaze snapped to Marcus. "You," Whitmore began, but Marcus didn't give him the satisfaction of speaking first. "Thank you, Mr. Whitmore," Marcus said coolly, offering a polite nod. "Your gallery has been a memorable experience. But I think we both know who the true artist is now." Whitmore's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. He had been outbid, outmaneuvered by the very artist he had once dismissed. It was a bitter pill for him to swallow, but Marcus was beyond caring. The game had changed. The tides had turned, and Marcus had proven that he was no longer a figure of mockery, he was a force in the art world.